We got a lot to get to tonight, but right off the top, we're going to talk about that shooting investigation involving a Dallas police officer and a murder suspect.
And Doug, you mentioned being able to dive deeper. That's exactly what we're about to do in this big story tonight. Dallas Police Chief Eddie Garcia spoke with the media today about last week's shootout that left one officer hurt. Remember, his vest saved his life. And we're getting some new details surrounding that suspect, but it left us asking questions, especially after that presser. So police say this man, you see him here, 45-year-old Juan Lopez, is accused of murdering a man near Fair Park. Now, sources say Lopez and the victim were having some sort of dispute over a woman.
And investigators did release body camera video that does show part of a chase. Officers say Lopez shot at an officer who was then hit by a bullet in his bulletproof vest, thank goodness. Lopez was eventually captured, as we know, inside a barn in Louisville. Chief Garcia shared earlier today that something raised quite a few eyebrows, honestly, when he said it. He said Lopez, who is now facing a murder charge, had been deported from this country at least 9 times since 2002. And so many questions with that very statement alone. And as we dive a little deeper, as we're going to do here at 7 o'clock, Immigration Attorney Jenna McConnell is joining us. Welcome. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, so when you hear Chief Garcia, and this is a world you live in every day, we look at it from the outside in, but educate us a little bit. 9 times at least deported. Surprised in any way when you hear that figure?
Yes, of course. That number is extremely high. This is one of the more egregious situations that I've come across.
So 9 deportations is not an everyday in the immigration world.
It's not. It's certainly not. Something like this makes the news because of that. And of course, this is sort of points to an issue that, of course, we see every day, is people returning to the United States without proper authorization. And simply, there just aren't the resources allocated properly for, essentially, the policies are not in place to monitor every square inch of the border. And that leaves holes open for people to enter unlawfully. This is an issue of someone who is entering unlawfully, continuing to do so, and unfortunately he happens to be someone who wishes to do harm to the people specifically in Dallas.
So I have a question. When we're talking about what's falling through the cracks and how that's possible, you mentioned the policies not being in place properly. He also had several aliases. Could that have contributed to being able to truly follow and track him? And then for people at home who don't know, in order to be deported, you have to meet kind of this criteria of things you did bad, right? Aggravated felonies, crimes against or crimes involving moral turpitude, and other serious crimes. So it's not just a violent crime that you can be taken away for, it's other crimes as well. But for people who don't understand that process, can you walk us through how the names maybe could have played a role here, and then dive into what else can get you deported?
Sure. So I'm not familiar with this particular case. I don't know why he was previously removed. Starting with the first time, I don't know why. It could have been for committing a crime. It could have been for being here unlawfully and not having any way to sort of convert that into lawful status. Some people are eligible to change their status in the United States and become lawful permanent residents. In a case where we see removal after removal after removal, typically after your first removal, you don't get the chance to come back. Now, sometimes you do. There are circumstances where you can. But
and when you say that, just for context, you're talking about coming back legally after
correct.
You've been deported.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right, yeah. Right. There is a law that would allow you to return after removal as long as you are coming back lawfully and go through the proper channels. People don't always do this. Now, people who return after a removal without going through the proper legal channels, they're subject to what's called expedited removal. So they're not typically presenting applications in court in front of an immigration judge. In rare circumstances, they may be able to, but they're basically on the next bus back or airplane back to their country of origin. As far as the aliases question goes, yes, to a certain extent. Now, ICE and CBP, the Department of Homeland Security in general, typically they're going to have biometrics, fingerprints, photos on people who have been removed. now, or deported. Now, if someone does not go through all of those checks and they just rely on someone providing a name and it's a fake name, it could slip through the cracks.
Sure. Yeah.
That's certainly something that could happen.
So let me throw this at you, because you work in the immigration world every single day. There is perhaps no more hot button topic in this country than immigration, right? And both sides are clearly defined who feels which way. And we don't need to dive into that. What I want to ask you, though, is for those people trying to immigrate to this country the proper way, what kind of fuel does this add to the fire when this story obviously makes big headlines? Right? You have a chief of police in a large market city in the country talking about it today for the second or third time.
Sure.
So what does that do for the pool of people who are trying, I guess, to do it the right way?
Well, I think it can be disheartening to a certain extent. What I think is the most important thing to keep in mind is that if you take the immigration context out of it, this is someone who, if guilty of what he's accused of doing, is not a good person. It doesn't matter where he's from. Sure. And I don't think that anyone would disagree about that on any side where you fall with immigration. I believe that it's more difficult for people who are seeking certain forms of immigration relief to be able to pursue that. For example, asylum seekers. It's more difficult for them if, with such a huge backup in the courts, for example, things are taking longer. CBP's resources are not being allocated perhaps in the most efficient way. And this is something that I don't think anyone would disagree, that we really need comprehensive immigration reform. Yeah. There's no way around it. I think both sides would agree, and everyone in the middle.
That was going to be my final question to you, is from where you sit on your side of the desk as an immigration attorney, what do you think the biggest challenge is, or what do you think the biggest or best remedy could be for this situation, for this crisis that we're having?
Well,
you got an hour? Got an hour?
Right, well, maybe two.
Yeah.
I think we do need some reform, because the last time that we've had such comprehensive reform I was quite a long time ago. We're talking like the late 90s, when most of the policies that have serious effects on current, for example, our current clients, are affecting them. So it's about time. It's as the immigration world changes, as migration patterns across the globe evolve, our laws need to as well. It's just difficult to get everyone to come together and agree on something when everything is inflammatory. I think that stories like these, my heart, and certainly the hearts of everyone I work with, go out to the Dallas police officer and to the victim. Stories like this are very, very, very minute in compared to what we see every day and the people that we are trying to help.
Right. Comparatively to the volume that you guys deal with every single day, we understand that. Jenna McConnell, your insight is so very much appreciated, and we appreciate you taking time. Give us a little bit of an education. I think we all learned a little something just with you being here to share.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much.